Hi, boys and girls. Thanks for joining me for chapter 21 of Matilda, the third miracle. The next day was Thursday, and that as the whole of Miss Honey's class knew was the day on which the headmistress would take charge of the first lesson after lunch. In the morning, Miss Honey said to them, "One or two of you did not particularly enjoy the last occasion when the headmistress took the class, so let us all try to be especially careful and clever today. How are your ears, Eric, after your last encounter with Miss Trunchbull?" "She stretched them," Eric said. "My mother said she's positive they are bigger than they were." "And Rupert," Miss Honey said, "I'm glad to see you didn't lose any of your hair." "My head was jolly sore afterwards," Rupert said. "And you, Nigel," Miss Honey said, "do please try not to be a smart aleck with the headmistress. You were really quite cheeky to her last week." "I hate her," Nigel said. "Try not to make it so obvious," Miss Honey said. "It doesn't pay. She's a very strong woman. She has muscles like steel ropes." "I wish I was grown up," Nigel said. "I'd knock her flat." "I doubt you would," Miss Honey said. "No one has ever got the better of her yet." "What will she be testing us on this afternoon?" a small girl asked. "Almost certainly the 3 times table," Miss Honey said. "That's what you are all meant to have learned this past week. Make sure you know it." Lunch came and went. After lunch, the class reassembled. Miss Honey stood at one side of the room. They all sat silent, apprehensive, waiting. And then, like some giant of doom, the enormous Trunchbull strode into the room in her green breeches and cotton smock. She went straight to her jug of water and lifted it up by the handle and peered inside. "I'm glad to see that there are no slimy creatures in my drinking water this time. If there had been, then something exceptionally pleasant would have happened to every single member of this class, and that includes you, Miss Honey." The class remained silent and very tense. They had learned a bit about the tigress by now, and nobody was about to take any chances. "Very well," boomed the Trunchbull. "Let us see how well you know your 3 times table. Or, put it another way, let us see how badly Miss Honey has taught you the 3 times table." Matilda, sitting motionless at her desk in the second row, was watching things very closely. "You," the Trunchbull shouted, pointing at Wilfred, "stand up. Recite the 3 times table backwards." "Backwards? But I haven't learned it backwards." "There you are," cried the Trunchbull. "She's taught you nothing. Miss Honey, why have you taught them absolutely nothing at all this last week?" "That's not true, Headmistress," Miss Honey said. "They have all learned their 3 times table. But I see no point in teaching it to them backwards. There is little point in teaching anything backwards. The whole point of life, Headmistress, is to go forward. I venture to ask whether even you, for example, can spell a simple word like wrong backwards. I very much doubt it." "Don't you get impertinent with me, Miss Honey," the Trunchbull snapped. And then she turned back to the unfortunate Wilfred. "Very well, boys," she said. "Answer me this. I have 7 apples, 7 oranges, and 7 bananas. How many pieces of fruit do I have altogether? Hurry up. Get on with it. Give me the answer." "That's adding up," Wilfred cried. "That isn't the 3 times table." "You blithering idiot," shouted the Trunchbull. "You festering gumboil, you flea-bitten fungus. That is the 3 times table. You have 3 separate lots of fruit, and each lot has 7 pieces. 3 sevens are 21. Can't you see that?" Poor Wilfred was flustered. "Wait, please wait. I've got to add up 8 coconuts and 8 monkey nuts." "You bursting blister," yelled the Trunchbull. "You moth-eaten maggot. This is not adding up. This is multiplication. The answer is 3 8s, or is it 8 3s? By now, Wilfred was far too frightened and bewildered even to speak. The two strides the Trunchbull was beside him, and by some amazing gymnastic trick, it may have been judo or karate, she flipped the back of Wilfred's legs with one of her feet so that the boy shot up off the ground and turned a somersault in the air. But halfway through the somersault, she caught him by the ankle and held him dangling upside down like a plucked chicken. 8 3s, the Trunchbull shouted, swinging Wilfred from side to side by his ankle. "Repeat that." Exactly at that moment, Nigel, at the other end of the room, jumped to his feet and started pointing at the blackboard. "The chalk! It's moving, all on its own." So hysterical and shrill was Nigel's scream that everyone in the place, including the Trunchbull, looked up at the blackboard. It's writing something, screamed Nigel. The chalk is writing something. And indeed it was. What the blaze is this? Said Trunchbull. It had shaken her to see her own first name being written by an invisible hand. She dropped Wilford on the floor. Then she yelled at nobody in particular. Who's doing this? Who's writing it? The chalk continued to write. Agatha, this is Magnus. This is Magnus. Everyone in the place heard the gasp that came from the Trunchbull's throat. No, it can't be. It can't be Magnus. Miss Honey, at the side of the room, glanced swiftly at Matilda. The child was sitting very straight at her desk, her head held high, the mouth compressed, and eyes glittering like two stars. This is what it looks like, boys and girls. Agatha, give my Jenny back her house. For some reason, everyone now looked at the Trunchbull. The woman's face had turned white as snow, and her mouth was opening and shuddering like a halibut out of water and giving out a series of strangled gasps. Give my Jenny her wages, give my Jenny the house, then get out of here. If you don't, I will come and get you. I will come and get you like you got me. I'm watching you, Agatha. The chalk suddenly stopped writing. It hovered for a few moments, and suddenly it dropped to the floor with a tinkle and broke into two. Wilford, who had managed to resume his seat in the front row, screamed. The Trunchbull had fallen to the floor. This is the most sensational bit of news of all, and the entire class jumped up out of their seats to have a really good look. And there she was, the huge figure of the headmistress, stretched full length on her back across the floor, out for the count. Miss Honey ran forward and knelt beside the giant. She's fainted. She's out cold. Someone go and fetch the matron at once. Nigel, always ready for action, leapt up and seized the big jug of water. My father says cold water is the best way to wake someone up, and he poured it over the Trunchbull's head. As for Matilda, she continued to sit motionless at her desk. She was feeling curiously elated. She felt as though she had touched something that was not quite of this world, the highest point of the heavens, the farthest star. It seemed as though she had hardly done anything. It had all been so simple. The school matron, followed by 5 teachers, 3 women, and 2 men, came rushing into the room. By golly, someone's floored her at last. Congratulations, Miss Honey. Who threw the water over her? I did, Nigel said. Good for you, another teacher said. Shall we get some more? Stop that, the matron said. We must carry her to the sick room. It took all 5 teachers and the matron to lift the enormous woman and stagger with her out of the room. Miss Honey said to the class, I think you all better go to the playground and amuse yourself until the next lesson. Then she turned and walked over to the blackboard and carefully wiped out all the chalk writing. The children began filing out of the classroom. Matilda started to go with them, but as she passed Miss Honey, she paused, and her twinkling eyes met the teacher's eyes. And Miss Honey ran forward and gave the tiny child a great big hug and a kiss.